When Ethan Montgomery, a spoiled heir, bets his friends he can turn a maid into high society material, he never expects to fall for Nia Williams. But when she discovers the truth, can he prove he's worth her heart? Or has he already lost everything? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun streamed through the massive windows of the Montgomery estate, casting a golden glow across the marble floors. Ethan Montgomery stretched lazily in his king-sized bed, reaching for his phone to check the time. It was nearly noon. "Another day in paradise," he mumbled to himself, running a hand through his tousled dark hair. At 33, Ethan had never worked a day in his life. Why would he? The Montgomery fortune had been built by generations before him, and all he had to do was enjoy it. And enjoy it he did, with fast cars, beautiful women, and endless parties. The sound of vacuuming outside his door reminded him that it was Wednesday, which meant the house staff would be cleaning his wing of the mansion. He groaned and pulled a pillow over his head, but the noise continued. Finally, with a dramatic sigh, he rolled out of bed and slipped on a silk robe. He opened his bedroom door, ready to ask them to come back later, when he noticed her. Nia Williams stood with her back to him, vacuuming the hallway carpet. Unlike the other staff who wore the standard black and white uniform without any personal touches, Nia had added a colorful scarf to her hair that somehow made the plain outfit look almost stylish. "Miss Williams," Ethan called out, raising his voice over the vacuum. Nia turned off the machine and turned around. "Good morning, Mr. Montgomery. Or should I say good afternoon?" There was a hint of judgment in her voice that both annoyed and amused him. "Could you possibly do this later?" "I have a headache," he lied, leaning against the doorframe. "I'm sorry, but your mother specifically asked that this wing be done before the luncheon she's hosting at 2, Nia replied, not backing down. "Perhaps you could take some aspirin. There's some in your bathroom cabinet." Ethan felt his lips twitch. Most of the staff were too intimidated to speak to him like that. "I suppose I'll have to manage somehow," he said dryly. "Carry on." Instead of returning to his room, however, he found himself watching her as she resumed working. There was something different about Nia Williams. Unlike the other employees who practically disappeared into the background, she had a presence that was hard to ignore. His phone buzzed with a text message from his friend Blake Harrison. "Polo Club, 1 p.m. Don't be late this time." Ethan texted back a thumbs-up emoji and headed to his bathroom to shower. As the hot water cascaded over him, his mind drifted back to Nia. She'd been working at the estate for about 2 years now, ever since her mother died. His own mother had mentioned something about Nia supporting younger siblings, which explained why she worked so hard. An hour later, Ethan was seated at the exclusive Montgomery Polo Club with his 3 closest friends, Blake Harrison, Carter, Phillips, and Devin Miles. They were the sons of the wealthiest families in the area, a brotherhood forged in expensive boarding schools and exclusive social clubs. "So, Ethan," Blake said, sipping his bourbon, "I hear your mother is throwing a pre-party for the derby this weekend." "As she does every year," Ethan replied, signaling the waiter for another round. "It's her way of reminding everyone that the Montgomerys are still at the top of the social ladder." "Speaking of social ladders," Carter interjected, "I saw the new maid at your place last week when I dropped off those documents for your father. Quite a looker, but definitely out of her element." Ethan knew immediately who he was talking about. "Nia Williams? Yeah, she's different from the others." "Different how?" Devin asked, always the most reserved of the group. Ethan shrugged. "She doesn't seem intimidated by any of us. My mother says she's incredibly hardworking, supporting her younger siblings since their mother died." "Well, hardworking or not, she would never fit in with our crowd," Blake laughed, his words slightly slurred from the alcohol. "What do you mean?" Ethan asked, suddenly defensive without understanding why. "Come on, Ethan. You've seen how these people are when they try to step above their station. Remember when your last chef's daughter tried to attend that charity gala? Total disaster. Fish out of water." The other men chuckled, but Ethan felt a strange discomfort. "I don't know. Nia seems pretty adaptable." "Adaptable?" Blake snorted. "I bet you $1,000 she wouldn't last 5 minutes at the derby. without making a complete fool of herself. Carter leaned forward, the thrill of a potential bet lighting up his eyes. Make it 5,000 and I'm in. Ethan brings the maid to the derby, and if she embarrasses herself, which she will, he pays up. Devin shook his head. That's cruel. Guys, the poor girl probably just wants to do her job in peace. What's cruel about it, Blake argued. She gets to attend the social event of the season, wear a fancy dress, drink champagne. Most girls would kill for that opportunity. Ethan felt a spark of excitement at the challenge. He'd always loved a good bet, especially when his friends thought he couldn't win. You know what? You're on. 5,000 says Nia Williams can blend in with the best of them at the derby. But there's a catch, Carter added with a smirk. You can't tell her about the bet. This has to be authentic. If she finds out, you automatically lose. Deal, Ethan said without hesitation, extending his hand to shake on it. As they clinked glasses to seal the bet, Ethan was already formulating his plan. He would need to invite Nia in a way that didn't raise suspicions, and he'd need to provide her with the right outfit, something elegant but not too flashy. The thought of the challenge ahead made him smile. This was going to be fun. Back at, say, the Montgomery estate, Nia Williams was finishing up her shift. Her back ached from hours of cleaning, but she couldn't afford to show any weakness. This job paid better than anything else she could find without a college degree, and her siblings, Emma and Luke, depended on her. Hey, Nia, you heading home? Asked Maria, one of the other maids. Just about. I need to check if Mrs. Montgomery needs anything else first, Nia replied, tucking a loose strand of hair back into her scarf. That woman always needs something, Maria muttered. I don't know how you stay so patient with her. Nia smiled. I just focus on the paycheck, not the attitude. As if summoned by their conversation, Eleanor Montgomery appeared in the doorway of the kitchen. In her early 60s, she maintained the elegance and poise of someone half her age, her silver-streaked hair perfectly coiffed. Nia, before you. Leave, could you bring fresh towels to Ethan's bathroom? He mentioned his were looking shabby, Eleanor said, managing to make even this simple request sound like a royal decree. Of course, Mrs. Montgomery, Nia replied politely, though inwardly she was annoyed. Ethan had probably used his towels once and decided they weren't fluffy enough. As she headed to the linen closet, she heard the roar of a sports car pulling into the driveway. Moments later, Ethan strolled in through the front door, his designer sunglasses perched atop his head. Mother, he called out, is Nia still here? Nia froze, towels in hand. Why would he be asking for her? Eleanor appeared from the sitting room. Yes, she's just finishing up. Is there something you need? Actually, yes, I need to speak with her about something. His tone was casual, but Nia felt a flutter of unease. She stepped into the hallway, clutching the towels. I was just bringing these up to your room, Mr. Montgomery. Ethan turned to her with a smile that she'd seen him use on countless beautiful women who visited the estate. Charming, but somehow insincere. Perfect timing. I'll walk with you. As they climbed the grand staircase together, Nia felt uncomfortably aware of the contrast between them. His casual designer clothes against her simple uniform, his relaxed demeanor versus her rigid posture. So, Nia, he began once they reached the second floor, I have a proposition for you. She raised an eyebrow. A proposition? The Kentucky Derby is this weekend, as I'm sure you're aware. It's hard not to be aware when Mrs. Montgomery has been planning her pre-Derby party for months, Nia replied. Ethan chuckled. Yes, well, it's a big deal in our circles. Anyway, I find myself in need of a companion for the event. Nia stopped, walking, her eyes widening. Are you asking me to go to the Derby with you? I am, as my guest, of course. All expenses paid. New. Outfit, transportation, the works. Her first instinct was suspicion. Why me? You know dozens of women who would jump at the chance. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, appearing almost nervous. That's just it. Those women, they're all the same. They want something from me, my name, my money, my connections. You're different. You've never tried to impress me or my family. I find that refreshing. Nia studied his face, looking for signs of mockery or deceit, but found none. Still, she hesitated. I don't know, Mr. Montgomery. I don't belong in that world. It's just one day, Nia. and I think you might enjoy it. The racing, the fashion, the excitement. Don't you ever wonder what it's like on the other side? She did wonder. Sometimes when she was cleaning the crystal chandeliers or polishing the silver, she imagined what it would be like to be one of the guests instead of the help. But she'd learned long ago that dwelling on such thoughts was pointless. I have responsibilities, she said finally. My siblings will be fine for one day, Ethan finished for her, and you'll be generously compensated for your time, of course. The mention of money made her flinch. I'm not for sale, Mr. Montgomery. That's not what I meant, he backtracked quickly. Think of it as a paid day off. You'd be doing me a favor, honestly. Nia bit her lip, considering. The extra money would help with Emma's upcoming school trip, and Luke needed new basketball shoes, and a small, rebellious part of her wanted to see the shock on Eleanor Montgomery's face when she found out. When would you need my answer? She asked carefully. By tomorrow morning. The event is Saturday, so we'd need to get you fitted for a dress as soon as possible. Nia nodded slowly. I'll think about it. Ethan smiled, looking genuinely pleased. That's all I ask. Later that evening, in the small but tidy apartment she shared with her siblings, Nia sat at their kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea as she weighed her options. You should totally go, Emma exclaimed when Nia told her about Ethan's invitation. At 16, Emma was full of romantic notions about rich, handsome men whisking ordinary girls off to fancy events. It's weird, Em. Why would he ask me? We barely speak except when he's asking me to do something for him. Maybe he secretly likes you, Emma suggested, her eyes sparkling with teenage fantasy. Or maybe he lost a bet, Luke muttered from the couch, where he was doing his homework. At 14, he was already growing cynical about the world. Nia frowned at that comment, but quickly dismissed it. Even Ethan Montgomery wouldn't be that cruel, would he? Look, I know we need the money, she said, but I don't want to put myself in an uncomfortable situation. Emma sat down beside her. Nia, when was the last time you did something just for fun? Since Mom died, all you do is work and take care of us. That's my job, Em. No, your job is being our sister, and we want you to be happy too. Emma squeezed her hand. Besides, I want to hear all about those fancy people and their silly hats. Nia couldn't help but laugh. The hats are pretty ridiculous. By the time she went to bed that night, Nia had made her decision. She would go to the Derby with Ethan Montgomery. Not because she wanted to impress him or his stuck-up friends, but because she wanted to prove to herself that she could walk into that world with her head held high. And maybe, just maybe, a small part of her wanted to see what it felt like to be treated like a lady for a day, instead of just the help. The next morning, when she arrived at the Montgomery estate, Ethan was waiting for her in the kitchen, looking uncharacteristically eager. Well, he asked as soon as she walked in. Nia took a deep breath. I'll go with you, Mr. Montgomery. His face broke into a genuine smile. Excellent. And please call me Ethan. If we're going to be seen together in public, we should at least be on a first-name basis. Ethan, she repeated, the name feeling strange on her tongue after years of formal address. But I have conditions. He leaned against the counter, amused. Conditions? This should be interesting. I won't pretend to be something I'm not. I won't make up some fake background story. If anyone asks, I work here, and I'm not ashamed of that fact. Ethan nodded slowly. Fair enough. And I'll need to be home by midnight to relieve my neighbor who's watching my siblings. No exceptions. Like Cinderella, he mused. I think I can manage that. Finally, Nia added, her voice firm. I want your word that this isn't some kind of joke or prank. Because if it is, it's not, Ethan interrupted, looking offended. I genuinely want you to accompany me, Nia. You have my word. As she looked into his eyes, Nia felt herself believing him despite her better judgment. Okay then, I guess we have a deal. Perfect. I've arranged for a stylist to meet us at Bellamy's boutique this afternoon at 4. They'll have a selection of dresses for you to try. The sudden reality of what she'd agreed to hit Nia. I've never been to something like this before. I won't know how to act. Ethan waved a dismissive hand. Just be yourself. Trust me, after a few glasses of champagne, no one will care who's who. But as Nia went about her cleaning duties that morning, She couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into dangerous territory. The wealthy lived by different rules, played different games. And she had a sinking feeling that in this particular game, she was just a pawn. Little did she know, in the gentleman's lounge of the Montgomery Polo Club, Blake Harrison was already placing side bets on how quickly the Maid would embarrass herself at the derby. And Ethan Montgomery, caught up in the thrill of the challenge, had temporarily forgotten that real people's feelings were at stake. All he could think about was the look on his friends' faces when Nia Williams walked into that derby, looking like she belonged. It wasn't until later, when he saw her carefully selecting a dress at the boutique, her face a mixture of excitement and trepidation, that a small pang of guilt began to form in his chest. But by then it was too late to back out. The game was already in motion. The morning of the Kentucky Derby arrived with perfect blue skies and a gentle breeze. In the Montgomery mansion, Eleanor was busy directing staff for her annual pre-derby brunch when she noticed her son descending the grand staircase, looking unusually well put together in his tailored light grey suit. "My, don't you look handsome?" she commented, adjusting his silk tie. "I was beginning to think you weren't going this year. You've been so secretive about your plans." Ethan gave her a non-committal smile. "Just wanted to keep things low-key this time." "And who's the lucky lady accompanying you?" Eleanor asked, her eyes sharp with curiosity. Before Ethan could answer, his father, Richard Montgomery, joined them in the foyer. At 65, Richard still commanded attention with his imposing height and perfectly tailored suits. "Yes, son." "Who's the flavor of the month?" Richard asked with a hint of disapproval. He had long wished his son would settle down with someone from their social circle. "You'll meet her soon enough," Ethan replied, checking his watch. "I'm going to pick her up now." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Pick her up? You mean she doesn't have her own driver?" Ethan resisted the urge to roll his eyes. "I'll see you both at the track. Save me some of that bourbon shrimp." As he slid into his silver Bentley, Ethan felt a mix of excitement and nervousness that was foreign to him. He'd spent the past 2 days coaching Nia on derby etiquette, which fork to use, how to hold a champagne flute, the basics of horse racing. She'd been a surprisingly quick study, absorbing the information with a determination that impressed him. But now, as he pulled up to her modest apartment building, doubt crept in. What if his friends were right? What if this was a mistake that would humiliate both of them? He was about to text her that he was outside when the building door opened and Nia stepped out. Ethan felt his breath catch. The stylist had outdone herself. Nia wore a pale blue dress that hugged her curves before flowing gracefully to just below her knees. A matching wide-brimmed hat adorned with a simple white ribbon sat perfectly atop her dark curls, which had been styled to frame her face. Her makeup was subtle but enhanced her natural beauty, highlighting her high cheekbones and full lips. She looked elegant, sophisticated, and entirely at ease in the outfit, nothing like the maid who cleaned his bathroom. Ethan quickly got out of the car to open the passenger door for her. "You look," he searched for the right word, "stunning." Nia smiled, and he noticed a hint of nervousness in her eyes despite her confident posture. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." As they drove to Churchill Downs, Ethan found himself stealing glances at her. Something had changed, and it wasn't just the dress or the makeup. There was a determination in her expression, a pride in the way she held herself. "Nervous?" he asked as they approached the historic racetrack. "A little," she admitted, "but more excited than nervous, I think. I've seen the Derby on TV every year since I was a child. Being here in person is like a dream." Her genuine enthusiasm made Ethan's guilt resurface. This wasn't just a bet to her. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. He pushed the thought away. She was going to have a wonderful day. He would win the bet and no one would get hurt. "Just remember what we practiced," he said as they pulled into the VIP parking area. "And if anyone asks how we met, we say I'm a family friend visiting from Chicago." Nia finished for him. "Though I still don't see why I can't just tell the truth." "Trust me, it's easier this way," Ethan replied, not meeting her eyes. "People can be judgmental." "You mean your people can be judgmental?" She corrected him with a knowing look. He couldn't argue with that. Just for today, let's forget about who works where and who comes from what background. Today, you're just Nia, and I'm just Ethan." She studied his face for a moment, then nodded. "All right, just for today." The moment they stepped onto the grounds of Churchill Downs, Nia was transported into a world she'd only seen in magazines. Women in colorful dresses and elaborate hats strolled alongside men in seersucker suits and bow ties. The air was filled with the scent of mint juleps and excitement. Ethan guided her through the crowd with a hand lightly on her back, nodding greetings to acquaintances as they made their way to the Millionaire's Row section. "Ethan, over here!" Ethan tensed as he heard Blake's voice. His three friends were gathered near the betting windows, drinks already in hand. This was the moment of truth. "Gentlemen," Ethan greeted them, keeping his tone casual, "I'd like you to meet Nia Williams. Nia, these are my friends, Blake Harrison, Carter Phillips, and Devin Miles." Nia extended her hand with a grace that surprised even Ethan. "It's a pleasure to meet you all. Ethan has told me so much about you." Blake's eyes widened slightly as he took in her transformation, clearly not expecting the maid to look so at home in this setting. "The pleasure is ours," he replied, recovering quickly. "Ethan's been quite mysterious about his date for today." "I can see why," Carter added with an appreciative glance that made Ethan feel inexplicably irritated. "You look absolutely stunning." "Nia, thank you," she replied with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Ethan could tell she'd picked up on something in their manner, some hint that things weren't quite what they seemed. "Can I get you a drink?" Ethan asked, eager to move away from his friends. "The mint juleps are a Derby tradition." "That sounds lovely," Nia said, relief evident in her voice. As they walked to the bar, Ethan heard Blake mutter something that made the others laugh. He pretended not to notice. "Your friends seem most interesting," Nia commented as they waited for their drinks. "They can be jerks sometimes," Ethan admitted, "but they're the only friends I've had since prep school." "That doesn't mean they're good friends," Nia said quietly, accepting her mint julep with a thank you to the bartender. Her words hit Ethan harder than he expected. He'd never really questioned his friendship with Blake and the others. They were just part of his life, like the mansion and the trust fund. Before he could respond, a familiar voice called out, "Ethan, darling." Ethan suppressed a groan as Vanessa Sinclair approached them. Daughter of a shipping magnate and his ex-girlfriend, Vanessa was the epitome of high society beauty, with her blonde hair and designer dress. "Vanessa, how nice to see you," Ethan lied smoothly. They had ended things badly 6 months ago when he'd caught her cheating with one of his father's business associates. Vanessa air-kissed his cheeks before turning her attention to Nia, her eyes coolly assessing. "And who is your friend?" "This is Nia Williams. Nia, this is Vanessa Sinclair." "Lovely to meet you," Nia said, extending her hand. Vanessa barely touched it before turning back to Ethan. "I didn't see your name on the guest list for the Hamilton party tonight. Surely you're not missing the biggest event of the weekend." "I have other plans," Ethan replied, placing a hand on Nia's back. The touch felt more protective than he had intended. Vanessa raised a perfectly arched eyebrow. "I see. Well, don't be a stranger, darling. You know where to find me if you change your mind." With a last dismissive glance at Nia, she sauntered away. "Ex-girlfriend?" Nia asked, taking a sip of her drink. "Is it that obvious?" "She looked at you like she owned you and at me like I was wearing a trash bag." Nia's directness made Ethan laugh. "Vanessa thinks she owns everyone. It's why we didn't work out," he explained, leading her toward their seats. Among other reasons, as they settled into their private box with a perfect view of the finish line, Ethan was pleasantly surprised at how naturally conversation flowed between them. Nia asked intelligent questions about the races and listened with genuine interest as he explained the Derby traditions. "So people actually bet thousands of dollars on these horses?" she asked, looking through the program. "Some bet hundreds of thousands," Ethan confirmed. "My father once won $500,000 on a long shot." Nia shook her head in wonder. "That's more money than I'll make in 10 years. The comment made Ethan uncomfortably aware of the disparity between their worlds. "Would you like to place a bet? For fun?" Her eyes lit up. "Can we? I've never gambled before." "Everyone should bet on the Derby at least once," Ethan said, pulling out his wallet. "Here's $100, choose any horse you like." Nia studied the program seriously, her brow furrowed in concentration. "What about this one? Spirit of Hope. I like the name and it says he's got heart." Ethan checked the odds. 30 to 1. A long shot, but it was her choice. Spirit of Hope it is. They placed the bet and returned to their seats just as Ethan's parents arrived at the box. "There you are," Eleanor said, then froze when she saw who was with her son. Nia. "Hello, Mrs. Montgomery." Nia greeted her employer with remarkable composure. "Mr. Montgomery." Richard looked from Nia to his son with barely concealed shock. "Ethan, a word, please." Ethan squeezed Nia's hand reassuringly before following his father to the corner of the box. "What is the meaning of this?" Richard demanded, in a harsh whisper. "You brought the maid to the derby?" "Her name is Nia, and yes, I invited her as my guest," Ethan replied, keeping his voice steady. "Do you have any idea how this looks? People will talk." "Let them talk. I'm not doing anything wrong." Richard's face hardened. "This is exactly the kind of irresponsible behavior that makes me question whether you're ready to take over the company." Ethan felt a flash of anger. The family business had always been his father's leverage over him. "Maybe I don't want the company. Did you ever think of that? Don't be ridiculous. It's your birthright. And this conversation is over," Ethan said firmly. "I'm going to enjoy the day with my date. You should try to do the same with Mother." He returned to Nia, who was chatting politely with Eleanor, though the tension between them was palpable. "Is everything okay?" Nia asked quietly as he sat beside her. "Perfect," Ethan lied, then changed the subject. "Tell me which hat you think is the most ridiculous here." The afternoon progressed more smoothly than Ethan had dared hope. Nia charmed several of his parents' friends with her genuine interest in their stories and her refreshing lack of pretension. Even Eleanor seemed to soften slightly as she watched Nia navigate the social complexities with natural grace. As the time approached for the main race, excitement built throughout the venue. Ethan and Nia returned to their seats, joining the Montgomerys and several of their friends. "So, Nia," Blake said, appearing suddenly beside them, "Ethan tells us you're from Chicago. What does your family do there?" Ethan tensed, but Nia answered smoothly. "My late mother was a teacher," she said truthfully. "I'm raising my younger siblings now and working to put them through school." "How admirable," Blake replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "And what kind of work do you do?" Before Nia could answer, the announcer called that the horses were approaching the starting gates. Saved by the bell, Ethan thought with relief. "And they're off!" The announcer's voice boomed as the gates opened and the thoroughbreds surged forward. The crowd roared as the horses thundered down the track. Nia leaned forward in her seat, clutching her program, eyes fixed on the number 8 horse, Spirit of Hope. "Come on, Spirit," she called out, caught up in the excitement. To everyone's surprise, Spirit of Hope, who had started in the middle of the pack, began gaining ground on the final turn. The crowd noise swelled as the horses entered the home stretch. "He's moving up," Ethan shouted over the noise. "Your horse is actually moving up." Nia was on her feet now, jumping and cheering along with the rest of the crowd. "Go, Spirit, go!" In a stunning turn of events, Spirit of Hope surged past the favorites in the final 100 yards and crossed the finish line a half-length ahead of the second-place horse. The crowd erupted. Nia turned to Ethan with a look of pure joy and threw her arms around his neck. "We won! I can't believe we won!" Caught up in her enthusiasm, Ethan lifted her off her feet and spun her around. When he set her down, their faces were inches apart, and something shifted in the air between them. For a brief moment, the noise of the crowd faded, and all Ethan could see was the sparkle in Nia's eyes and the smile that lit up her entire face. "Beginner's luck," Blake's voice cut through the moment as he appeared beside them, looking distinctly unhappy. Ethan reluctantly stepped back from Nia. "We should go collect your winnings." "Winnings?" Nia asked, still dazed from the excitement, and from whatever had just passed between them. "You bet $100 on a 30 to 1 long shot," Ethan explained. "You just won $3,000. Nia's eyes widened. $3,000? Are you serious?" "Completely serious," Ethan confirmed, enjoying her reaction more than he thought possible. As they made their way to the betting window to collect her winnings, Nia seemed to float on air. "I've never won anything in my life," she confessed. "This feels like a dream. You deserve it," Ethan said sincerely. And he meant it. In the span of a few hours, Nia had not only proven his friends wrong about her ability to fit in, but had also shown more genuine character than most people he'd known his entire life. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of celebrations and congratulations. News of Nia's lucky bet spread quickly, and many people came by to meet the woman who'd picked the Derby winner her first time out. "I thought you said you'd never gambled before," Devin commented when they rejoined the group. "I haven't," Nia replied. "I just liked his name and the fact that his bio said he had heart. Sometimes heart is all you need," Devin said with a genuine smile, the first of Ethan's friends to show real warmth toward her. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over Churchill Downs, Ethan found himself standing slightly apart from the crowd watching Nia, as she chatted animatedly with a group that included his mother and several society matrons. She fit in seamlessly, yet somehow maintained her authenticity in a world built on facades. "I have to hand it to you," Blake said, joining him with a fresh drink in hand. "You're going to win this bet. She's been remarkably adequate." Ethan felt a surge of irritation. "She's been more than adequate. She's been amazing." Blake studied him with narrowed eyes. "Don't tell me you're actually falling for the help." "Don't call her that," Ethan snapped louder than he intended. Blake held up his hands in mock surrender. "Touchy, touchy. Remember, this was just a bet, Ethan, a bit of fun. Don't lose perspective." As Blake walked away, Ethan felt a coldness settle in his stomach. He'd been so caught up in the day, in Nia's joy and the unexpected connection growing between them, that he'd almost forgotten how this had all started. But now, watching her laugh and shine among people who would ordinarily look through her, the reality of his deception hit him full force. He had brought her here under false pretenses. Everything she was experiencing, the clothes, the admission to this exclusive world, his attention, it was all based on a lie. And if she ever found out the truth, she would never forgive him. The thought troubled him more than it should have. Why should he care if the maid was upset with him? It wasn't like they had a real relationship. This was just one day, a momentary diversion from their regular lives. But as Nia caught his eye across the room and smiled that radiant smile that seemed to come from her very soul, Ethan knew he was lying to himself. This wasn't just about a bet anymore. Something had changed. He had changed, and he had no idea what to do about it. Later, as the Derby festivities began to wind down, Ethan and Nia found themselves walking along the edge of the track, away from the crowds. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, and a comfortable silence had settled between them. "Thank you for today," Nia said finally, her voice soft. "It was more than I ever could have imagined." "I'm glad you enjoyed it," Ethan replied, shoving his hands in his pockets to resist the urge to reach for hers. "It wasn't just the winning or the fancy clothes," she continued, stopping to look at him directly. "It was being treated like a person with value, not just someone who cleans your house." Guilt twisted in Ethan's stomach. "You've always had value, Nia. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel otherwise." She studied his face, her eyes searching. "Why did you really invite me today, Ethan? And don't say it's because you find me refreshing. Nobody does something like this without a reason. The perfect opportunity to come clean, to tell her about the bet, apologize, and hope she would understand." But as he looked into her trusting eyes, Ethan couldn't bring himself to shatter the magic of the day. "Maybe I wanted to see you smile," he said instead, the words coming from a place of truth despite the omission. "You don't smile much at the house." "There's not much to smile about when you're scrubbing toilets," she replied, with a hint of her usual directness. But her eyes had softened. "You should smile more often. It lights up your whole face." A blush crept across her cheeks and she looked away. "We should probably head back. I need to be home by 9, remember?" "Of course," Ethan said, reluctantly turning toward the exit. Cinderella must return before the spell breaks. But as they walked back to join the others, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was the one under a spell, one that had nothing to do with fancy clothes or Derby winners, and everything to do with the remarkable woman beside him, a woman who deserved far better than a spoiled playboy, who had brought her here on a bet. As they drove back toward the city, Nia was quiet, gazing out the window with a small smile on her lips. The envelope with her winnings was clutched tightly in her hands, as if she feared it might vanish. "What will you do with the money?" Ethan asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Nia didn't hesitate. "Put most of it in savings for the kids' college funds, but I might splurge on a nice dinner for us this weekend. Emma and Luke deserve a treat." Of course, her first thought would be for her siblings. Ethan felt a twinge of shame when he thought about how he would have spent $3,000, probably on a weekend in Vegas or a new watch he didn't need. "You're a good sister," he said sincerely. "I try to be." She turned to look at him. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure," he replied, curious. "What do you want from your life, Ethan, besides the parties and the fast cars?" The question caught him off guard. No one had ever asked him that before. His father assumed he would take over the family business. His mother expected him to marry someone suitable and provide grandchildren. His friends didn't care as long as he kept the good. "Time's rolling, I don't know," he admitted after a long pause. "I've never really thought about it." "Maybe you should," Nia suggested gently. "You're smart, you're privileged, you could do anything. Seems a waste to just drift." Her words struck a chord. Was that what he was doing? Drifting? The thought was unsettling. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from Blake. "Party at Harrington's tonight. Don't forget to bring your little pet project. We need to settle our bet." Ethan quickly silenced his phone, but not before Nia noticed his expression change. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Fine," he lied, feeling anything but fine. Just Blake. Being Blake. As they pulled up to Nia's apartment building, Ethan felt a strange reluctance to end the day. "I'll walk you up," he offered. "That's not necessary," Nia began, but he was already out of the car and opening her door. They walked in silence to her apartment door, both aware that something had shifted between them, but neither quite ready to acknowledge it. "Well," Nia said, keys in hand, "thank you again for today. It was unforgettable. Maybe we could do it again sometime," Ethan suggested impulsively. "Not the derby, obviously, but dinner or—" "Ethan," she interrupted gently, "today was wonderful, but let's not pretend this is something it isn't. Tomorrow you'll be back in your world and I'll be cleaning your bathroom." Her practicality was like a splash of cold water. "It doesn't have to be that way," Nia smiled sadly. "Doesn't it? What would your parents say if you seriously dated the help? What would your friends think?" The mention of his friends made Ethan wince internally, thinking of the bet that had started all this. "I don't care what they think," he said with more conviction than he expected to feel. "But I do," Nia replied. "I have my pride, Ethan, and a reputation to maintain. I can't be the maid who's sleeping with the boss's son. That's not what—" "Good night, Ethan," she said firmly, opening her door. "Thank you for a magical day." Before he could respond, she had disappeared inside, closing the door gently but definitively between them. Ethan stood there for a moment, feeling strangely bereft. Then he slowly made his way back to his car, his mind a jumble of conflicting thoughts and emotions. His phone buzzed again with another text from Blake. "Where are you? Hamilton party is starting. Bring the maid so we can see her in her natural habitat. Serving drinks instead of drinking them." Anger flared in Ethan's chest. He started to type a scathing reply, then stopped. Blake and the others were expecting him to bring Nia to the party tonight, where they would no doubt try to humiliate her to win the bet. The thought of them mocking her, trying to prove she didn't belong, made him feel physically ill. He needed to end this bet now, before things got even more complicated, before Nia got hurt. With a sense of resolve, Ethan texted back, "Not coming, bets off." Blake's response was immediate. "No way. You can't back out now. Besides, Carter already told everyone about it. Half the party is waiting to see the maid. They're playing dress-up." Ethan's blood ran cold. If word of the bet got back to Nia, he couldn't let that happen. He started the car with a renewed sense of urgency. He needed to find Blake and the others, make them understand that the bet was over, and ensure their silence. He would pay the $5,000, Hell, he would pay 10 times that amount if it meant protecting Nia from the truth. As he drove toward the Hamilton estate, Ethan realized with startling clarity that what had begun as a frivolous wager had somehow become the most important thing in his life. And he would do whatever it took to make things right. But as he pulled into the crowded driveway of the mansion, he had no idea that Nia was about to receive a phone call that would shatter the magic of the day and change everything between them. Forever. Nia Williams leaned against her apartment door after closing it, her heart still racing from the day's events. She kicked off the designer heels that had been pinching her feet for the last hour and padded to the kitchen in her stocking feet. "Nia, is that you?" Emma called from the living room, where she was watching TV with Luke. "It's me," Nia confirmed, setting her purse and the envelope with her winnings on the kitchen counter. Emma and Luke rushed to the kitchen, eyes wide with curiosity. "You look amazing," Emma gushed, circling her sister to admire the elegant blue dress. "Like a movie star." "How was it?" Luke asked, his usual teenage apathy replaced by genuine interest. "Did those rich people treat you okay?" Nia smiled, touched by their concern. "It was incredible. I actually won some money on a horse race." "No way," Emma exclaimed. "How much?" $3,000, Nia said, still hardly believing it herself. Luke's jaw dropped. "Are you serious? That's more than your monthly salary." "I know," Nia laughed, pulling out the envelope to show them the cash inside. "I'm going to put most of it away for your college funds, but I thought we could go out for a nice dinner this weekend." Emma hugged her tightly. "You're the best sister ever. But what about Mr. Rich Guy? How did that go?" Nia's smile faltered slightly. "Ethan was different than I expected. He was actually kind and attentive. I had a really nice time with him." "Oh," Emma teased. "You like him?" "It's not like that," Nia insisted, though her cheeks grew warm. "We come from completely different worlds. Today was just a fairy tale, and now it's over." "But he likes you," Emma pressed. "I can tell by your face." "Emma, enough," Nia said firmly. "Help me out of this dress, and then I want to hear about your day." As Nia changed back into her comfortable jeans and t-shirt, she tried to push thoughts of Ethan from her mind. Yes, there had been moments today when she'd felt a connection with him, moments when he seemed to see her as a woman, not just an employee. But she was practical enough to know that men like Ethan Montgomery didn't end up with women like her. Today had been a beautiful dream, but tomorrow reality would come crashing back. She would return to cleaning his family's mansion, and he would return to his privileged life of parties and meaningless relationships. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. The caller ID showed Maria, her co-worker from the Montgomery estate. "Maria, everything okay?" Nia answered, surprised to get a call from her on a Saturday night. "Nia, thank God you answered." Maria's voice was hushed and urgent. "I'm at the Hamilton party. I'm working the catering staff for extra money." "Okay," Nia said, confused as to why Maria was calling to tell her this. "You need to know something," Maria continued, her voice dropping even lower. "I overheard Mr. Ethan's friends talking. They made a bet about you." Nia felt her stomach drop. "What kind of bet?" "They bet Mr. Ethan that he couldn't get you to fit in at the derby. They said he only invited you to win money from them." $5,000. The room seemed to tilt around Nia as Maria's words sank in. "Are you sure about this?" "Positive. They're laughing about it right now, saying how they can't believe you didn't figure it out. One of them, Blake, I think his name is, he's telling everyone at the party." Hurt and humiliation washed over Nia in a sickening wave. Every moment she'd thought was special had been a lie. Every kind word, every smile, every touch, all part of a cruel game. "Nia, are you still there?" Maria asked after a long silence. "Yes." Nia managed, her voice surprisingly steady despite the turmoil inside. "Thank you for telling me, Maria. I'm sorry, I know you like him. We all saw how you look at him." "It doesn't matter," Nia said firmly. "It was just a job to me like any other day of work." The lie tasted bitter in her mouth, but her pride wouldn't allow her to admit how much Ethan's betrayal hurt. After hanging up, Nia sat on the edge of her bed, staring blankly at the beautiful dress now hanging on her closet door. Emma appeared in the doorway, concern etched on her young face. "Nia? What's wrong?" You look like someone died." Nia forced a smile. "Everything's fine. Just tired. From the long day." "You're lying," Emma said, sitting beside her. "What did Maria say to upset you?" Nia sighed, knowing her sister was too perceptive to fool. "It turns out Ethan didn't invite me to the derby because he wanted my company. He made a bet with his friends that he could pass me off as one of them." Emma's eyes widened with indignation. "That jerk, after everything you do for his family." "It's fine, Em, really. I got a beautiful day out, a fancy dress, and $3,000 out of it. So who's the real winner here?" "But he hurt your feelings," Emma insisted. "My feelings don't matter," Nia said, standing up and straightening her shoulders. "What matters is that I don't let him or any of them see that they got to me." Emma looked at her sister with concern. "What are you going to do?" Nia's expression hardened with resolve. "I'm going to go to work on Monday morning with my head held high. I'm going to do my job professionally, and I'm going to make it clear to Ethan Montgomery that he and his childish games mean nothing to me." But as she prepared for bed that night, Nia couldn't stop the tears that finally came, hot and bitter. How could she have been so foolish? How could she have allowed herself to feel something for a man who saw her as nothing more than a pawn in his games with his equally spoiled friends? The worst part wasn't the humiliation. It was the realization that despite everything, a part of her had begun to care for Ethan. She had seen glimpses of a decent man beneath the privileged exterior, and she had allowed herself to hope just for a moment that he might care for her too. Now she knew better, and she would never make that mistake again. Across town, the Hamilton estate was ablaze with lights and music as the after-derby party reached its peak. The elite of society mingled and danced, celebrating another derby weekend in style. Ethan Montgomery pushed his way through the crowd, scanning faces for his friends. He finally spotted Blake near the bar, holding court with a group of admirers. As he loudly recounted some story, "Blake," Ethan interrupted, his voice tight with controlled anger. "We need to talk, now." Blake looked up with a smirk. "Well, look who finally decided to join us. Where's your date? Did Cinderella turn back into a cleaning lady already?" The group around them laughed, fueling Ethan's anger. Outside. "Now," Ethan demanded, grabbing Blake's arm and practically dragging him toward the terrace. Once they were away from the crowd, Ethan released him with a shove. "The bet is off, I'm serious." "Come on, man. Don't be a sore winner," Blake slurred, clearly having had several drinks. "You won fair and square. She didn't embarrass herself." "This isn't about winning or losing," Ethan snapped. "This is about a woman's dignity. I want your word that no one will ever know about this bet." Blake studied him with narrowing eyes. "Holy shit, you actually like her?" "That's not the point. It's exactly the point," Blake laughed incredulously. "Ethan Montgomery has fallen for the help. Wait until everyone hears this." "If you tell anyone, our friendship is over," Ethan warned, his voice deadly serious. Blake's amusement faded, replaced by a cold, calculating look. "You know, I've always wondered what your father would think if he knew about that weekend in Vegas 2 years ago. The one where you nearly bankrupted the company's discretionary fund on a single poker game." Ethan felt his blood run cold. "Are you blackmailing me?" "I'm reminding you where your loyalties should lie," Blake replied, straightening his jacket. "We've been friends since we were kids. We've covered for each other, protected each other. And now you're threatening to end all that over some maid?" Ethan struggled with his rising anger. "Her name is Nia, and yes, I will end our friendship if you hurt her." "You need to get your priorities straight," Blake said, shaking his head. "Go home, sleep it off. Tomorrow you'll remember who your real friends are." As Blake turned to rejoin the party, he tossed over his shoulder. "By the way, too late on the secret. Carter already told half the party. It's just too good a story not to share." Ethan stood frozen on the terrace, a sick feeling spreading through him. If word got back to Nia... He pulled out his phone and tried calling her, but the call went straight to voicemail. "Nia, it's Ethan. Please call me back. I need to explain something. It's important." He left similar messages 2 more times before giving up. Either she was asleep or she was already ignoring his calls. Neither boded well. With a growing sense of dread, Ethan left the party and drove home, his mind racing with ways to make this right. By the time he reached the Montgomery estate, he had resolved to go to Nia's apartment first thing in the morning, to confess everything and beg for her forgiveness. But even as he made this plan, a voice in the back of his mind whispered that some betrayals cut too deep to be forgiven. Sunday morning dawned grey and rainy, matching Ethan's somber mood. He had barely slept, haunted by thoughts of Nia's reaction when she learned the truth. He tried calling her again, but still got her voicemail. Unable to wait any longer, he drove to her apartment building and knocked on her door. There was no answer. After several attempts, a neighbor poked her head out. "She's not home," the elderly woman informed him. "Left early with her brother and sister. Said something about a day trip to see their aunt." Ethan thanked her and trudged back to his car, frustration mounting. He would have to wait until tomorrow when Nia came to work. The thought of confronting her in the place where she was employed, where the power imbalance between them was most pronounced, made him uncomfortable, but he saw no alternative. Monday morning, Ethan made sure to be up early, something practically unheard of for him. He waited, in the kitchen, knowing Nia usually started her day there, preparing coffee for the family. At exactly 7:30, she walked in, wearing her usual uniform with the colorful scarf tied around her hair. She stopped short when she saw him. "Nia," he began, standing quickly. "I've been trying to reach you." "Mr. Montgomery," she replied, her voice formal and cold. "I don't answer my personal phone during non-work hours. Was there something you needed?" The distance in her tone told him everything. She knew. "Nia, please. I need to explain about the bet." "There's nothing to explain," she cut him off, moving to the coffee machine and beginning her usual routine. "You made a bet with your friends that you could make the maid presentable enough for high society. You won. Congratulations." Her calm demeanor was worse than if she had shouted or cried. She was treating him like he was nothing to her. "It wasn't like that," Ethan insisted. "I mean, yes, it started as a stupid bet, but then..." "Then what?" Nia asked, finally turning to face him. "You realized I was a human being with feelings, that I might be hurt if I found out I was just a game to you and your friends." The pain in her eyes made Ethan wince. "I was going to tell you. I went to the Hamilton party to end the bet, to make sure no one would tell you." "Well, too late for that," she said bitterly. "Maria heard your friends laughing about it and called to warn me." Ethan closed his eyes briefly, cursing Blake and the others. "I'm sorry, Nia, truly sorry. What began as something thoughtless became real to me. The day we spent together was one of the most genuine experiences I've ever had." Nia's expression softened almost imperceptibly before she caught herself. "It doesn't matter now. What's done is done. If you'll excuse me, I have work to do." "Please," Ethan said, blocking her path slightly. "Give me a chance to make it up to you." "Make it up to me," Nia repeated incredulously. "How exactly do you plan to do that? Take me to another event as your charity case? No, thank you. That's not what..." "I meant, Mr. Montgomery," she interrupted firmly. "I work here, you live here. Let's keep our relationship professional from now on." With that, she moved past him and continued her duties, her back straight and her movements efficient. The message was clear. Conversation over. Ethan stood in the kitchen, feeling utterly helpless. He had never had to work for anyone's forgiveness before. Usually his charm or his money solved any problems he encountered. But he could tell that neither would work with Nia. For the next week, Ethan tried everything he could think of to get Nia to talk to him. He left apology notes where she would find them during her cleaning. He sent flowers to her apartment. He even enlisted Emma's help by accidentally running into the younger girl after school and explaining his side of the story. But Nia remained distant and professional, addressing him only when her job required it, and ignoring all his attempts at personal conversation. Meanwhile, word of the bet had spread throughout their social circle. Ethan found himself shunned by some, mocked by others. His mother was mortified, and his father was furious. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Richard Montgomery thundered during a confrontation in his study. "You've made a laughingstock of this family. And for what? Some infatuation with the help?" "Don't call her that," Ethan said automatically, too tired to muster real anger. "This ends now," Richard declared. "I've spoken with Eleanor and we've decided to let Ms. Williams go." That got Ethan's attention. "What?" "No. You can't fire her because of me. We're not firing her because of you, Richard clarified coldly. We're letting her go because this situation has created an inappropriate dynamic in our household. We'll provide an excellent reference and a generous severance package. She needs this job, Ethan argued desperately. She's supporting her siblings. She'll find another position. With her work ethic and our reference, it shouldn't be difficult. Ethan paced the study, mind racing. If you fire her, I'll leave. Richard's eyebrows shot up. Excuse me? You heard me, Ethan said, surprising himself with his resolve. If Naya loses her job because of my mistake, I'll move out. I'll sell my shares in the company. I'll walk away from all of it. Father and son stared at each other, the challenge hanging in the air between them. You would give up your inheritance, your future for this girl? Richard asked, genuine disbelief in his voice. Yes, Ethan replied without hesitation, because for once in my life, I'm trying to do the right thing. I hurt someone who didn't deserve it, and I won't let her be punished for my actions. Richard studied his son with new eyes, as if seeing him for the first time. You're serious about this? Completely. After a long moment, Richard nodded slowly. Very well, Ms. Williams can keep her position, but whatever this is between you two, it needs to be resolved without further disruption to this household. Thank you, Ethan said sincerely. I'll handle it. But as he left his father's study, Ethan had no idea how to keep that promise. How could he resolve things with a woman who wouldn't even speak to him? The answer came 2 days later in the form of a crisis. Ethan was in the garden trying to clear his head when Emma called him in a panic. Ethan, it's Emma Williams. Luke's been hurt. There was a fight at school, and he's in the hospital. Nia's with him, but she's freaking out because she can't leave work to stay with him, and I can't miss school tomorrow because of finals and— Slow down, Emma, Ethan interrupted. Which hospital? Mercy General. But Ethan, Nia doesn't know I'm calling you. She'll be mad. Don't worry about that, he assured her. I'll handle it. Just stay with your brother, okay? Ethan rushed to the hospital, stopping only to inform his mother he had a personal emergency. He found Emma in the waiting room looking small and scared in a chair too big for her. Emma, he called, hurrying over to her. What happened? Where's Nia? She's with Luke. They're setting his arm, Emma explained, visibly relieved to see him. Some seniors were picking on his friend and Luke stepped in. They pushed him and he fell badly. Is he going to be okay? Emma nodded. The doctor said, it's a clean break, but he'll be in a cast for weeks and he's on the basketball team. Don't worry about that now, Ethan said gently. Let's just make sure he's taken care of. When Nia emerged from an exam room 30 minutes later, she froze at the sight of Ethan sitting beside her sister. What are you doing here? She demanded, her surprise quickly turning to anger. I called him, Emma admitted. I was scared and I didn't know who else to call. Before Nia could respond, a nurse approached her with discharge papers and instructions for Luke's care. He'll need to rest for the next 48 hours, and someone should stay with him to monitor for concussion symptoms. Nia's face fell. I have to work tomorrow. I can't get time off on such short notice. Yes, you can, Ethan interjected, standing up. In fact, you have the rest of the week off with pay. Nia looked at him suspiciously. You don't have the authority to do that. Actually, I do, Ethan replied calmly. I just spoke with my mother. She sends her best wishes for Luke's recovery and insists you take the time you need. It wasn't entirely true. He had texted his mother from the hospital parking lot. But Eleanor had indeed agreed once he explained the situation. Nia seemed torn between gratitude and lingering resentment. Thank you, she finally said stiffly. Please tell your mother I appreciate it. I'd be happy to drive you all home, Ethan offered, as Luke was wheeled out, looking pale and miserable with his arm in a cast. That's not necessary, Nia began, but Luke interrupted. Nia, please. I feel like crap, and I just want to go home. Seeing her brother's discomfort, Nia reluctantly agreed. The drive to their apartment was awkwardly silent, save for Emma's occasional attempts at conversation. When they arrived, Ethan insisted on helping Luke up to their third-floor apartment, despite Nia's protests. As Luke settled on the couch, clearly exhausted from pain medication, Nia pulled Ethan aside in the small kitchen. "Thank you for your help," she said formally. "But you can go now." Ethan looked at her tired face, the worry lines between her brows, and made a decision. "Let me stay and help, just for tonight. You're exhausted, and the nurse said someone needs to check on Luke every couple of hours." "We can manage," Naya insisted. "I know you can," Ethan said softly, "but you don't have to. Not alone." Something in his tone must have reached her, because after a moment, Nia's shoulders slumped slightly. "Fine, you can take the first watch. Wake me in 4 hours. With that, she disappeared into her bedroom, leaving Ethan in the small living room with a sleeping Luke and a relieved-looking Emma. "Thanks for staying," Emma whispered. "She would never admit it, but she needs the help." As the night progressed, Ethan got his first real glimpse into Nia's world. The apartment was small but immaculately clean and filled with family photos. The furniture was worn but well cared for. Everything spoke of a woman who worked hard to create a home with limited resources. Every 4 hours, either Ethan or Naya would wake Luke to check his responses. During one of these checks, around 3 a.m., they found themselves in the kitchen together, Nia making tea while Ethan leaned against the counter. "Your brother seems to be doing well," Ethan commented. "His responses are good," Nia nodded, some of her earlier tension gone, replaced by simple exhaustion. "Thank God, I was so scared when the school called. You're a good sister, Nia. These kids are lucky to have you." She gave him a wary look. "I don't need your approval." "I wasn't offering approval," Ethan clarified. "Just an observation. I admire what you've done for them." Nia was quiet for a moment, stirring her tea. "Why are you really here, Ethan?" "Because you needed help. There are agencies for that. Home health aides, nurses. Would you have called one?" Nia's silence was answer. "Enough. I'm here because I care about you," Ethan said simply. "Because I made a terrible mistake that hurt you, and I will spend as long as it takes trying to make that right." "You can't fix this with grand gestures," Naya said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "I know, I'm not trying to sweep you off your feet, Nia. I'm just trying to be the kind of man who deserves your forgiveness someday." Their eyes met across the small kitchen, and for the first time since the derby, Ethan saw something other than coldness in her gaze. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. "Get some sleep," she said finally. "I'll take over with Luke." The next morning, Ethan went home to shower and change, promising to return with groceries and dinner. To his surprise, Naya didn't object. For the next 3 days, a routine developed. Ethan would spend most of his days at the Williams apartment, helping with Luke, running errands, and giving Nia breaks to rest. At first, their interactions were strained and formal, but gradually, as Ethan proved his sincerity through consistent support rather than flashy gestures, the tension began to ease. By the end of the week, Luke was feeling much better and complaining of boredom. Emma had finished her finals and was able to help more, and Nia and Ethan had reached a fragile truce. On Ethan's last night as a volunteer caretaker, after Luke and Emma had gone to bed, he and Nia sat on the small balcony of the apartment, looking at the city lights. "Thank you," Nia said quietly, "for helping with Luke. It meant a lot to him, to all of us." Ethan smiled, a weight lifting from his chest at her words. "I was happy to do it." "I'm still angry about the bet," she continued, meeting his eyes directly. "I don't know if I can ever fully trust you after that." "I understand," Ethan replied, accepting her honesty. "I wouldn't trust me either." They sat in silence for a moment before Nia spoke again. "But I'm willing to try," she said softly, "to see if we can at least be friends, for real this time, not based on a lie." Ethan felt a surge of hope. "I'd like that very much." "No more bets," Nia warned, a flicker of humor in her eyes for the first time in weeks. "No more games, no more bets," Ethan agreed solemnly. "Just honesty from now on." As the city lights twinkled below them, something new and fragile began to grow between them. Not the instant attraction of the Derby Day, but something potentially stronger. A connection built on respect, honesty, and the beginning of true understanding. But neither of them realized that Blake Harrison had not forgotten or forgiven Ethan's defection from their social circle, and he was about to make a move that would test their newfound trust in ways they couldn't imagine. Across town, in his luxurious penthouse, Blake stared at his phone, a malicious smile playing on his lips as he read the text message from Carter. Montgomery's still hanging around the Maid's place, playing nursemaid to her brother now. Blake took a sip of his whiskey and replied, time to remind him who his real friends are. Set up the meeting for Friday. As he set down his phone, Blake picked up a folder containing financial records from the Montgomery Corporation, documents Ethan had no idea Blake had obtained, documents that showed irregularities that could spell disaster for the Montgomery family if they became public. Let's see how much your little maid means to you when your family's legacy is on the line, Blake murmured to himself, closing the folder with a satisfied smile. The trap was set. Now all he had to do was wait for Ethan to walk right into it. The following week brought a gradual return to routine. Luke's arm was healing well, and Nia returned to work at the Montgomery estate. Things were different now, though. Eleanor Montgomery treated her with a newfound respect, even asking about Luke's recovery. The other staff noticed the change, but were wise enough not to comment on it. And then there was Ethan. True to his word, he maintained a respectful distance while still finding small ways to show he cared. Her cup of coffee waiting for her when she arrived in the morning. A note asking if Luke needed anything for school. Nothing flashy or dramatic, just consistent, thoughtful gestures. Nia found herself looking forward to their brief interactions, though she was careful not to show it. Her heart had been badly burned, and she wasn't ready to risk it again so soon. But she couldn't deny that something had shifted between them during those days when Ethan had helped care for Luke. "You're humming," Maria commented one morning, as they folded laundry together. "I haven't heard you hum in weeks." Nia hadn't realized she was doing it. "Just in a good mood, I guess." Maria gave her a knowing look. "It wouldn't have anything to do with a certain someone who's been bringing you coffee every morning, would it?" "Don't be ridiculous," Nia said quickly. "Ethan and I are just friendly now, that's all." Maria hummed skeptically. "Well, friendly is an improvement from how you were looking at him a couple weeks ago, like you wanted to stab him with the butter knife." Nia couldn't help but laugh. He deserved it. "Maybe," Maria conceded. "But people can change, you know, especially when they have the right motivation." Before Nia could respond, Eleanor Montgomery appeared in the doorway. "Nia, when you're finished here, would you come to the drawing room? There's something I'd like to discuss with you." "Of course, Mrs. Montgomery," Nia replied, exchanging a curious glance with Maria as Eleanor walked away. 15 minutes later, Nia knocked on the drawing room door, wondering what Eleanor wanted to discuss. She found the older woman sitting at her writing desk, looking unusually thoughtful. "You wanted to see me, Mrs. Montgomery." Eleanor gestured to a chair. "Please, sit down." Nia sat, fighting her growing nervousness. Was she about to be fired after? "Oh, I've been observing you for some time now, Nia," Eleanor began. "Your work ethic, your dedication to your siblings, the way you handled yourself at the Derby." Nia tensed at the mention of the Derby. "I owe you an apology," Eleanor continued, surprising Nia. "I've not always treated you with the respect you deserve. I viewed you as just another employee, not as a person with dreams and responsibilities." "Mrs. Montgomery, that's not necessary. Please let me finish," Eleanor insisted gently. "What my son did to you was inexcusable, but in a strange way it opened my eyes. I saw how gracefully you handled yourself in our world, and then how dignified you remained when the truth came out." Eleanor reached into her desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. "The Montgomery Foundation offers educational scholarships each year. I'd like to offer you one." Nia stared at the envelope in shock. "A scholarship? For online courses at first, if you prefer, so you can continue working and caring for your siblings. But eventually a full college education, if that's what you want." Tears sprang to Nia's eyes. A college education had been her dream before her mother died, before responsibility for her siblings fell to her. She had put that dream aside, believing it was gone forever. "Why would you do this for me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eleanor's face softened. "Because my son sees something special in you, and I've finally seen it too. Intelligence and potential shouldn't be wasted because of circumstance." "I don't know what to say," Nia admitted, taking the envelope with trembling hands. Say you'll consider it, Eleanor said with a smile. That's all I ask. As Naya left the drawing room, her mind spinning with this unexpected opportunity, she nearly collided with Ethan in the hallway. Whoa, careful, he said, steadying her with a hand on her arm. You look like you've seen a ghost. Your mother just offered me a scholarship, Nia blurted out, still processing the conversation. For college, Ethan's face lit up with genuine happiness. That's fantastic, Nia. Will you take it? I don't know, she admitted, her initial joy giving way to practical concerns. My work schedule, the kids. If anyone can make it work, it's you, Ethan said with conviction. And you know I'd help however I could. Nia studied his face, seeing nothing but sincerity in his expression. Did you have anything to do with this? No, he answered honestly. But I'm not surprised. My mother is a good judge of character once. She takes the time to really see someone. A comfortable silence fell between them before Ethan spoke again. I was actually looking for you. I wanted to invite you and the kids to a charity event this weekend. The Montgomery Foundation is hosting a fundraiser for children's education. Naya's automatic response was to decline, but something in Ethan's hopeful expression made her hesitate. This isn't another bet, is it? She asked, only half joking. Absolutely not, Ethan replied seriously. Just a friend inviting a friend to an event I think you'd enjoy. Emma and Luke, too. Friend. The word felt right, even if part of her wondered if there could someday be more. I'll think about it, she promised. That's all I ask, Ethan said, echoing his mother's words without realizing it. As Nia continued with her work that day, the scholarship offer and Ethan's invitation occupied her thoughts. Was she ready to trust again, to step back into Ethan's world, even with her siblings as buffers? And was she brave enough to reach for her long-abandoned dreams of education? That evening, as she shared the news with Emma and Luke over dinner, their enthusiastic responses helped clarify her thinking. You have to take the scholarship, Nia, Emma insisted. You've put your life on hold for us long enough. And we should. Definitely go to that charity thing, Luke added, surprising Nia. Ethan's cool. He sat with me for hours playing video games when my arm was killing me. Nia raised an eyebrow. Since when are you on Team Ethan? I thought you said he probably lost a bet. Luke shrugged. People can change, I guess. And he seems to really like you. The simple observation from her normally cynical brother struck Nia deeply. Maybe it was time to stop punishing Ethan for his mistake and start allowing for the possibility that people, even privileged playboys, could grow and change. That night, she texted Ethan, "We'd love to come to the charity event. All three of us." His response came immediately. "Wonderful, I'll pick you up at 6. And Nia, thank you for giving me another chance." Meanwhile, across town, Blake Harrison was finalizing his plans. The charity event would be the perfect setting for his revenge. Richard Montgomery, along with key shareholders and business associates, would all be present. The stage was set for Ethan to make a very public choice between his family legacy and his infatuation with the Maid. Friday evening arrived, and Nia found herself once again preparing for an event in Ethan's world. This time, though, there was no bet, no deception, just a simple invitation between friends. And this time, Emma and Luke would be with her. Ethan arrived promptly at 6, looking handsome in a classic tuxedo. His expression when Nia opened the door in a simple but elegant emerald green dress was worth all the hours Emma had spent helping her get ready. "You look beautiful," he said simply, his admiration evident. "You clean up pretty nice yourself," Nia replied, echoing her words from the Derby day, but with genuine warmth this time. Emma emerged from her room in a pretty blue dress borrowed from a friend, with Luke trailing behind, looking uncomfortable, but handsome in a suit Ethan had sent over earlier in the week. "Everyone ready?" Ethan asked, seeming genuinely pleased to be, escorting all three Williams siblings. The charity event was being held at the Grand Montgomery Hotel, the crown jewel of the family's business holdings. As they entered the ballroom, Nia was struck by the difference in how she felt compared to the Derby. This time there was no anxiety about fitting in, no pressure to be anyone other than herself. "Ethan, over here," called Eleanor Montgomery, who was standing with Richard near the entrance. Ethan guided Nia and her siblings toward his parents. "Mother, father, you remember Nia, and these are her siblings, Emma and Luke." To Nia's surprise, both Eleanor and Richard greeted them warmly. Eleanor even complimented Emma on her dress choice, while Richard engaged Luke in conversation about his basketball team. "I think they're actually trying," Ethan whispered to Nia. As they moved toward their table, "Wonders never cease," Nia replied with a smile. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider that maybe, just maybe, the gap between their worlds wasn't as unbridgeable as she had thought. The evening proceeded pleasantly. Emma was thrilled to be at such a glamorous event and charmed several of the guests with her enthusiasm. Luke, initially reluctant, found himself engaged in a lengthy conversation with a former NBA player who was among the charity's supporters. For Nia, she moved through the crowd with a confidence born of knowing she belonged there, not because of a bet or a makeover, but because of who she was. "You seem different tonight," Ethan observed as they shared a quiet moment at their table. "More relaxed." "I'm not trying to be anyone else," Nia explained. "Just me." "Just you is pretty amazing," Ethan said softly, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her heart beat faster. Before she could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew their attention. Blake Harrison had arrived, late and clearly already intoxicated, with Carter and several other friends in tow. Ethan tensed beside her. "I should have known he'd show up. My father insisted on inviting him because of his family's connections." "It's fine," Nia assured him, though she felt her own anxiety rising. Her last encounter with Blake had not been pleasant, and she had no desire to repeat the experience. But Blake seemed to have other plans. After making his way around the room, greeting various guests with exaggerated cordiality, he headed straight for their table. "Ethan and the lovely Ms. Williams," Blake greeted them, his smile not reaching his eyes. Such a touching tableau, the heir and the maid together again. "Blake," Ethan replied coldly, "if you can't be civil, I suggest you move along." "Oh, I'm being perfectly civil," Blake insisted, pulling up a chair uninvited. "In fact, I'm here as a friend, looking out for your best interests." "Somehow I doubt that," Ethan said, placing a protective hand over Nia's on the table. Blake's eyes narrowed at the gesture. "You know, I've been doing some research into the Montgomery Corporation finances. Fascinating reading." Ethan went very still. "What are you talking about?" "Just some irregularities I stumbled upon. Nothing major, unless of course the SEC were to take an interest." Blake leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Which they might, if these documents happen to find their way to them." "Are you threatening me?" Ethan asked incredulously. "Not threatening, offering a choice," Blake corrected, his voice silky smooth. "End whatever this is with the maid, return to your proper place in society, and these documents stay buried. Continue. This embarrassment and, well..." He spread his hands in a gesture of regret. Nia stood abruptly. "I think I need some air," she said, not wanting to be part of this conversation any longer. "Nia, wait," Ethan began, but she was already walking away, her mind racing with doubt and hurt. Had she been a fool to believe things could be different? That the gulf between their worlds could ever be bridged? Blake's cruel reminder of her status, the maid, stung more than she wanted to admit. She found a quiet corner on the terrace away from the crowds and took deep breaths of the cool night air. A few minutes later, Ethan appeared beside her. "I'm so sorry about Blake," he said, anger still evident in his voice. "He's drunk and bitter and trying to cause trouble." "Is what he said true?" Nia asked. "About the financial irregularities?" Ethan hesitated. "I don't know. My father has always had creative accounting methods, but nothing illegal as far as I know. Either way, it doesn't matter. Doesn't it?" Nia challenged him. "If Blake really has something that could harm your family's company, your legacy, I don't care," Ethan interrupted with surprising vehemence. "Let him do his worst." Nia studied his face in the soft lighting of the terrace. "You've worked your whole life to take over that company someday. You can't throw it away over this. Over you mean?" Ethan took her hands in his. "Nia, I meant what I told my father. If the price of my inheritance is giving up someone I care about, then it's not worth having." "You barely know me," Nia protested, though her heart raced at his words. I know enough, Ethan insisted. I know you're the strongest, most principled person I've ever met. I know you've sacrificed everything for your brother and sister without complaint. I know that meeting you has made me want to be better than I've ever been. Tears filled Nia's eyes at the sincerity in his voice. Ethan, let me finish, he said gently. I've spent my whole life taking the easy path, never standing up for anything or anyone. But you make me want to be brave, to be worthy. And if Blake or anyone else thinks they can threaten me into walking away from you, they don't know how determined I can be when something really matters to me. Nia was speechless, overwhelmed by his declaration. What are you saying exactly? I'm saying I care about you, Nia Williams, more than I've ever cared about anyone, and I'm asking for the chance to show you that, to prove that I can be the man you deserve. Before she could respond, the sound of raised voices from inside the ballroom drew their attention. They hurried back inside to find a scene of chaos. Blake stood in the center of the room, clearly drunker now, waving a folder and shouting at Richard Montgomery, who looked both furious and pale. Everyone should know what kind of business the great Richard Montgomery really runs, Blake was saying loudly. Tax evasion, hidden accounts, misappropriation of funds. Security guards were moving toward Blake, but the damage was already being done. Guests were whispering, phones were being pulled out, and Richard looked like he might collapse. Without hesitation, Ethan strode forward into the center of the commotion. That's enough, Blake, he said firmly, his voice cutting through the noise. Ah, here's the prodigal son now, Blake sneered. Come to defend Daddy's honor? Or are you too busy playing house with the help? A flash of anger crossed Ethan's face, but he controlled it. You're drunk, Blake, and you're making a fool of yourself. Whatever grievance you have with me, this isn't the way to handle it. He threatened your family, Ethan, Blake slurred, gesturing toward Richard. Did you know that? When you stood up for your little maid, he threatened to cut you off completely. No inheritance, no trust fund, nothing. Nia gasped, looking from Ethan to Richard, who had the decency to look ashamed. Is that true? Ethan asked his father quietly. Richard nodded stiffly. I wanted to protect you from making a mistake, to protect our family name. Instead of the anger Nia expected, Ethan's expression softened with something like pity. I'm sorry. You still don't understand what really matters, Father. He turned back to Blake. As for you, whatever you think you have in that folder, I suggest you hand it over now, before you do something you can't take back. Or what? Blake challenged. You'll cut me off too? Oh wait, you already did that when you chose the maid over your real friends. Her name is Nia, Ethan said through gritted teeth. And yes, I chose her. I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. The room had gone silent, everyone watching the confrontation with rapt attention. Nia stood frozen, stunned by Ethan's public declaration. You're pathetic, Blake spat. Throwing away everything for some... He never finished the sentence. In a move that shocked everyone, Eleanor Montgomery stepped forward and slapped Blake Harrison across the face. That is quite enough, young man, she said, her voice ice cold. You will leave my hotel immediately, or I will have security remove you. And you may tell your parents that the Montgomery family will no longer be doing business with Harrison Industries. Blake stared at Eleanor in shock, holding his cheek. You can't do that. Our families have been partners for generations. Watch me, Eleanor replied coolly. Now, the folder, please. Whether it was Eleanor's unexpected intervention or the security guards closing in, Blake seemed to deflate. He handed over the folder with a sullen glare. This isn't over, he muttered as security escorted him toward the exit. I believe it is, Eleanor replied calmly. As Blake and his friends were removed from the event, Richard approached Ethan, his expression grave. What Blake said about cutting you off, it wasn't entirely untrue, he admitted. I did threaten it, but I never meant to go through with it. It doesn't matter, Ethan replied honestly. I meant what I said. Some things are more important than money or status. Richard looked from his son to Nia, who had been joined by Emma and Luke. Perhaps, you're right, he said finally. Perhaps it's time I learned that lesson myself. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur for Nia. Guests gradually returned to their conversations, though now she and Ethan were the subjects of many curious glances and whispered discussions. But for once, she didn't care what anyone thought. As the event wound down, Ethan drove Nia and her siblings home, all three Williams much more subdued than when the evening had begun. "I'm sorry about what happened," Ethan said as they pulled up to their apartment building. "Blake ruining the night and all the drama." "Are you kidding?" Emma piped up from the back seat. "That was the most exciting party I've ever been to. Wait until I tell my friends." Despite the tension, they all laughed at Emma's enthusiasm. "You two go on up," Nia told her siblings. "I need to talk to Ethan for a minute." Once they were alone in the car, Nia turned to face him. "Did you mean what you said back there about choosing me?" "Every word," Ethan replied without hesitation. "I know we've only known each other a short time, and that we still have a lot to learn about each other. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. What about your family, your future?" "My future is whatever I want it to be," Ethan said with newfound conviction. "And I want you to be part of it if you'll have me." Nia took a deep breath, searching his face in the dim light of the car. "I'm still not sure I trust this. Trust us. It all feels so unlikely." "Maybe that's what makes it special," Ethan suggested, taking her hand. "We're an unlikely pair from different worlds, brought together by a stupid bet that turned into something real." "Very unlikely," Nia agreed with a small smile. "But then again, so was a 30-1 long shot winning the Derby." "And you bet on that," Ethan reminded her. "Maybe it's time to take another chance." As she looked into his eyes, Nia felt the last of her reservations melting away. This wasn't the fairy tale she had expected. It was messier, more complicated, filled with real people and real emotions. But perhaps that made it more valuable, more genuine. "I'm willing to try," she said softly. "One day at a time." Ethan's face lit up with joy. "That's all I ask." Under the starlit sky, he leaned forward and kissed her gently, a promise of what could be if they were brave enough to reach for it. 6 months later, Nia sat in her first college classroom, notebooks ready, heart racing with excitement and nerves. The scholarship from the Montgomery Foundation had made this possible, along with a restructured work schedule that allowed her to clean the Montgomery estate in the mornings and attend classes in the afternoons, while Emma and Luke were at school. Eleanor had become an unexpected ally, not only supporting Nia's education, but also taking a genuine interest in Emma and Luke's futures. Richard, while slower to come around, had gradually accepted Ethan's relationship with Nia, especially after seeing how his son had matured and taken a more active role in the family business. As for Blake Harrison, the documents he had threatened to expose had indeed contained some concerning financial practices, but nothing criminal. With Ethan's encouragement, Richard had hired an independent auditor to clean up the company's accounting methods, avoiding any potential scandal. The Montgomery and Harrison families maintained a cool but civil relationship in public, though Blake himself had been quietly sent to manage a family property in Europe, whether by his choice or his parents, remained a matter of speculation. And Ethan, he had proven himself to be everything he had promised that night at the charity event. Patient, supportive, genuinely committed to showing Nia that their unlikely connection was worth nurturing. He spent as much time at the Williams' modest apartment as he did at the Montgomery mansion, becoming a part of their small family unit in ways none of them had expected. There were still challenges, of course, moments when the differences in their backgrounds created misunderstandings or friction, times when the weight of other people's judgments tested their resolve. But with each obstacle overcome, their bond grew stronger. "Ready for your first class?" Ethan asked now, having insisted on driving her to campus for this milestone. "As ready as I'll ever be," Nia replied, gathering her courage. "You're going to be amazing," he said with absolute confidence. "Just like you are at everything else." Nia leaned over and kissed him quickly. "Thank you for believing in me." "Always," Ethan promised. "Though I think it's fair to say we've both come a long way from that first Derby day." As Nia walked toward her classroom, she couldn't help but reflect on the unexpected journey that had brought her here. A journey that had begun with a thoughtless bet but had evolved into something neither of them could have predicted. She had entered Ethan's world initially as a pawn in a game, but she had emerged as his partner, his equal. And he had entered her world as a privileged outsider, only to become an essential part of it. Their story wasn't one of instant transformation or magical solutions. It was a story of growth, of genuine change, of two people from different worlds, finding common ground in their respect and care for each other. And really, wasn't that the greatest bet of all? Taking a chance on someone else's heart, trusting them with your own, believing that love could bridge even the widest divides. It was a bet that Nia Williams, former Maid turned college student, was finally ready to make. Because some gambles, despite the odds, were simply worth taking. The end.